Russia is preparing for another conscription campaign. In the meantime, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin would not like to conduct this mobilization campaign because he's afraid of his own people. Also, the White House is no longer afraid of Russia's nuclear threats, and President Zelenskyy will meet with US President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and former US President Donald Trump next week in the United States to discuss a plan for Ukrainian victory. The Wall Street Journal reported about the internal discussions inside the Kremlin on the mobilization issue. According to the Wall Street Journal, Russia's defense ministry was putting pressure on Russian dictator Vladimir Putin to conduct another mobilization campaign. They would like to do that because of the man shortages and their lack of the human resources to continue their war against Ukraine. Also, according to the Wall Street Journal, at the beginning of this year, Russia's defense ministry was putting pressure on Putin to conduct mobilization before his inauguration. However, Russian dictator Putin refused to do that and insisted on moving more resources to other areas. Also, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin insisted on calling more volunteers to conduct this war against Ukraine, to calling more volunteers to the Russian army to continue its aggressive war against Ukraine. Also, Wall Street Journal notes that another wave of mobilization could raise dissatisfaction among Russian elites and among Russian people. That's why Russian dictator Vladimir Putin was hesitating to conduct another mobilization campaign. However, some people in the Kremlin say that this mobilization is inevitable, and also they're talking that they do not have other choice but to conduct another mobilization campaign due to the high losses on the ground. And this mobilization is needed for Russia to sustain the war because they have suffered enormous losses on the ground. However, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin would not like to do that. At the same time, the Institute of Study of War reported that, according to their analysis, another mobilization campaign in Russia would not be conducted. There is in the short and medium term, Putin fears that it could be a direct threat to the stability of his regime. Institute of Study of War analyzed the recent messages in the media on the possible mobilization campaign, and analysts come to the conclusion that Putin is unlikely to conduct this mobilization campaign because he is afraid of his own people. In addition, Putin constantly signaled that this operation did not force him to conduct another mobilization campaign. He had such opportunity after the beginning of the Kursk offensive deep inside Russia. He could call a mobilization campaign, conduct this campaign. However, he refused to do that because he was afraid that there could be a dissatisfaction among Russian people. Also, analysts emphasized that the Kremlin and Russia's Ministry of Defense largely could shock Russian society, and this mobilization could be a big shock for the Russian people who would not like to participate in this war against Ukraine, in the war zone, who wouldn't like to be on the war zone, who wouldn't like to be among the Russian soldiers killed and wounded. Also, at the same time, Guardian reported that Russians knew about Ukraine's offensive deep inside Russia in the Kursk region. However, they did not prepare for it. According to the Guardian, there have been some documents which were revealed to the British journalist. According to these documents, Russian soldiers were preparing for the Kursk operation. However, they did not do it well. They did not prepare, and around 60 or 70% of the meant on average and mainly consist of poorly trained reservists. Only poorly trained reservists were deployed to the Kursk region. That's why Ukraine successfully captured the city of Sudzha. There also Ukraine took the full control of Sudzha, and these documents indicated that there are some serious problems with Russian morale. There are lots of the suicide among Russian soldiers deployed to the Kursk region, and that's why their commanders were forcing Russian soldiers to watch Russia's television to put higher morale, to raise the morale among the Russian soldiers. However, they did not succeed in that. That's why lots of Russian soldiers flee from their positions on the ground after the beginning of the Kursk offensive in the Kursk region of Russia. Also, the United States is not afraid of Russia's nuclear threats. This statement was made by the National Security Advisor to the US President, Jake Sullivan. Sullivan said that White House no longer takes into account Russia's nuclear threats and another threats from the Kremlin. That's why they make all decisions only depend on their minds and on a strategy towards the war in Ukraine. And also there were some rumors and some reports that Jake Sullivan could be a reason why there is a delay in allowing Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia. Last week there was a meeting between Joe Biden and Keir Starmer on the long-range capabilities and on the possibility to allow Ukraine to strike deep inside Russian territory. There were expectations that the US and UK could allow Ukraine to conduct such deep strikes with ATACMS systems and with cruise missiles Storm Shadow. However, the United States did not allow Ukraine to do that, and there are some reports that this permission could be granted only by the United Kingdom to allow Ukraine to strike deep inside the Russian territory with long-range Storm Shadow cruise missiles. Also, there have been some reports that President Zelenskyy would meet with these leaders to discuss this issue. Next week, President Zelenskyy will hold high-stake talks with U.S. President Joe Biden, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, and former U.S. President Donald Trump. Leaders will discuss the war in Ukraine. Also, according to The Economist and other media outlets, President Zelenskyy would present to those leaders a plan for Ukrainian victory. There will be serious negotiations between Ukraine, President Zelenskyy, and US President Joe Biden. President Zelenskyy will try to convince Biden to allow Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia with ATACMS systems. Also, in his talks with Kamala Harris, he will present a plan how to end the war in Ukraine on acceptable terms for Ukraine. Also, there would be another high-stakes meeting with former US President Donald Trump. They would discuss other issues. However, it would be an important meeting because there were some other plans from the Trump's inner circle which were not acceptable for Ukraine. Also, G.D. Vance recently said that Trump's plan to end the war in Ukraine could consist of the frozen conflict, could consist of creating a demilitarized zone, a buffer zone between Ukraine and Russia, and could bar Ukraine's membership in NATO. However, those terms are unacceptable for Ukraine, who is fighting for its freedom and lasting peace, even after the end of the war in Ukraine. And let's end our program with recent news from Germany. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has pushed through the German government allocation of another 1.4 billion of euros. This money would be used to support Ukraine's war effort. Also, there have been some reports about the budget problems within the German government. However, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and his ministers have solved that issue, and 1.4 billion euros would be allocated for Leopard tanks, Marder vehicles, and other important drones and missiles which would be provided to Ukraine to help Ukraine to defend itself in the near term. And that's good news from Germany. And let's cover also another important news, and we will stay with us on YouTube and analyze this. That's all for today. Stay with us on YouTube, subscribe on our to our YouTube channel, and glory to Ukraine.